All right. So we have Dr. Alexandria Connolly first.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us this evening for the County Clerk Candidate Forum. I am Dr. Alexandria Connolly of CD 16 Indivisible. This forum is being sponsored by 21 indivisible and activist groups, and we thank them. The Democratic primary election is Tuesday, June 22nd. Early voting begins this coming Saturday, June 12th, and runs through Sunday, the 20th. Absentee ballots must be postmarked by June 21st. This is the only countywide primary election. Please vote and encourage others to as well. Tonight's questions for the candidates were submitted by voters and a small group of individual leaders. Our moderator for this evening is John Metaxas. John broadcasts the news to audience of more than 1 million people on WCBS News Radio 880. He and his colleagues at WCBS were winners of the 2021 Edward R. Morrow Award for Best Newscast in the New York region for their report at the very beginning of the coronavirus crisis. John has reported and anchored for CNN, ABC, CNBC, and Bloomberg. He is admitted to the bar in New York and podcasts on law and other topics. Welcome, John.
Thank you very much, Dr. Connolly, for the introduction. I appreciate it. And here's how our forum is going to work tonight. Each candidate is going to have 2 minutes for an opening statement. The order was chosen by a coin toss just a few moments ago. Each candidate will also have 2 minutes for a closing statement in reverse order. The questions will be directed to both candidates. Each will have 2 minutes to respond. Who goes first will alternate with each question. Our timekeeper will hold up a sign when speakers have 30 seconds remaining, and then when time is up, we ask that they respect the time so we can ask more questions and cover more topics. As for the candidates, Tim Idoni is the incumbent county clerk. He was elected mayor of New Rochelle in 1991 and reelected 3 times. He was elected county clerk in 2005 and has served there for the past 16 years. Shanae Williams is the council member in the 1st District in Yonkers. She was appointed to the City Council in 2018 and won election in 2019. Shanae was born in Jamaica and immigrated to Yonkers as a child. Now to our first question. And well, actually, before we get to the first question, we're going to have the opening statements. And by the coin toss earlier, the first opening statement goes to Shanae Williams.
Thank you. And good evening again, everyone. Thank you so much to the Westchester Indivisible for hosting this event. And I'm so honored to have this opportunity to speak to the public at large about why I'm running for Westchester County Clerk and why I think we need new leadership. So as you've heard, I am a council member in the city of Yonkers, and I'm actually also a Democratic district leader here in the city of Yonkers. But my story did not start in Westchester. I did immigrate from Jamaica when I was 9 years old with my family. I became straight here to Yonkers. I am a product of public schools. I went to Dodson Elementary and Mark Twain Middle School. And then I went to Hastings High School. And from there, I went to SUNY Albany, studied sociology and political science. I graduated from there, top of my class, and I went straight back to Yonkers, where I began my career in government. I worked in the Yonkers mayor's office for over 6 years before running for office and being at this point where I am now. And people ask me all the time, why am I running for county clerk? And I think it's so important for you to understand who I am as a person and why this is so important to me. When I was 19 years old in college, my green card was set to expire. And as a new college grad trying to navigate the immigration system and figuring out how to go about becoming a naturalized citizen was not an easy process. There was no outreach, there was no government office that I knew of that I could tap into. There was no hub of resources that was readily available to me. And it got to a point where I almost lost my status altogether and became undocumented. If it wasn't for the situation that I was at college and I had a counselor available who encouraged me to apply for the state assembly internship, which then led me to get connected to my congressman at the time, which was Elliot Engel, I would not have been saved and had the opportunity to become a citizen. And I don't think that, so many people in Westchester County would be as lucky as I was. And that's why I think this office, the county clerk's office, is so important. I know firsthand what it's like to not have access to information. And I think the county clerk's office can be used to do so much more. And that is why I'm running. That is why I'm invested. And I hope that throughout this, this candidates forum, you will learn more about why I think I'm the best choice for you to vote for on June 22nd to be your county clerk. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that statement. And now the opening statement from Tim Idoni.
Thank you, John, and welcome to Westchester once again. I want to thank Shannon Powell, Bruce, and also Dr. Connolly for organizing this wonderful event. Not often, having spent the number of years, obviously, in the county clerk's office, do you get a chance to talk about the county clerk's office like this, and a vitally important department in the county of Westchester. It is a department. This position is a commissioner level position. I run a department that is very, very important to the taxpayers and the residents of this community. And I was led to this position after being mayor for 14 years because I wanted to get back into, in effect, municipal management. This department, I don't think should even be elected. I testified to that in the Charter Revision Commission a number of years back. They almost fell off their chair. It should be considered a management position that just happens to be elected. I guess I have a good record of being elected, but I think I have even a better record of managing government. I was the village manager of Ardsley. I was an assistant to the village administrator in Bronxville. I was deputy city manager of New Rochelle, all before I became mayor of New Rochelle. And they asked me to run for mayor of New Rochelle, a bipartisan group, because I knew how to run governments and they wanted New Rochelle to get back on its feet. And indeed, we were able to do that. The county clerk's office has been run with my progressive values, which are shared with almost everybody, I'm sure, that are listening to this tonight. And I have a lifetime commitment to public service. I went to graduate school at New York University to become a city manager. Very few people can say that they've spent their entire professional career doing exactly what they wanted to do. But indeed, that has been it was my dream, and it has become the success that I've had. And I think every place that I've been has seen a better commitment to good government, to smaller government. And we'll go into more of the details later. I don't want to take up too much of the time. I'm sure your questions will cover everything that I want to say in this particular piece. But thank you so much, everybody, for listening this evening. And let's get to it. Let's answer the questions. Thanks so much for listening.
All right, thank you for your opening statement, Mr. Idoni. And I just want to remind both candidates that Bruce Campbell is our timekeeper, and he's putting up the 30-second notice and then the time notice, which means you've come to the end of 2 minutes. You'll now have 2 minutes to answer each of the following questions, and we will reverse order for the first question, and so that will go to Tim Idoni. The county clerk is the oldest elected office in Westchester County, dating from 1684, yet many people do not have a full understanding of the clerk's office. What do you see as the most important thing the clerk's office does? What are the most important issues facing the office in the coming years? And what is the thing that voters should consider most in making their decision?
Well, to answer your last statement first, I think professional management experience is the most important thing. I have to supervise over 60 people in the office at this point in time. When I first got there, there were 110. But the fact is that a lot of people only know the county clerk's office when they need it. But you darn well better get a top level of service when you get there. I am the clerk, as any county clerk is the clerk of the Supreme Court and the county courts. Over 100,000 cases come through our office, and we have to be organized. We have to be ready. We have to be able to take care of whatever needs the people that are filing the lawsuits and those who are defending the lawsuits be able to take care of. We're also responsible for land records. Every single piece of real estate that gets transacted goes through my office. When you buy a house or a condo, you better have somebody in there that knows what they're doing. And I think over the last 16 years, we have proven to be able to get that done. And we're doing it smaller and better at this point in time. As I said, 110 people down to now 60 as of today, and we're doing it faster. One of the best things I like to brag about is that when I got there, it took 9 months to get a deed recorded. we now take 15 minutes, and that is the absolute truth of the matter. We have automated every system in the department. We have gotten to the point where everybody, if you call up, you're going to get an answer. If we don't have the answer, it's probably not in the county clerk's office. And I have people that are trained, including myself, since I've worked so long in this business, to know where to go get the answers. You just can't guess. People want to know what your government is doing and how you're doing it. And we know how to do it at this point in time. Very, very proud of that fact. I've built a very professional staff, one that hits the ground running every single day. We work very, very hard, and I'm very, very proud of the system that we built in. And I'll go into more of that in other questions. Thanks so much.
All right, Shanae Williams, opening statement. I mean, excuse me, answer this first question, my mistake.
Yes, thank you. Could you repeat the question at the second?
Surely. The county clerk is the oldest elected office in Westchester County, dating from 1684. Yet many people do not have a full understanding of the clerk's office. What do you see as the most important thing the clerk's office does? What are the most important issues facing the office in the coming years? And what is the thing voters should consider most?
That's a great question. Thank you for that. So it's hard to say what the most important part of the clerk's office is, because it's such an important office overall. Like Mr. Idoni said, the majority of the work that's being done in land records and in the legal department, it's all very important. So it's hard to pick just one thing. I do think, however, that the issue facing the clerk's office right now is the fact that there are so many residents, for the simple fact that it's the oldest elected office in all of Westchester County, but people still have no idea what the clerk's office is, what services and resources they have that's available to them. I think that is probably the biggest issue facing the office. And I think it's incumbent upon us as elected officials to do a better job to bring the information to the public directly, meeting them where they are, whether it's through utilizing social media, whether it's being on the ground in the community, in their spaces at local events, or just sending out newsletters and just being active all year round, not just when you're running for elected office, right? So I think what residents should know about the clerk's office is that it is so resourceful. It is, I think, in my opinion, it is underutilized. I think we can expand a lot of the services and be more strategic about how we go about bringing information to people. And that is something that I intend to address once I'm elected. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So we'll reverse the order for the next question. So this goes to Shanae Williams first. A question from a constituent. Just last month, the CIA reported that foreign adversaries are ramping up cyber attacks against U.S. citizens. Given that Westchester is a prime target for this and that the county clerk is charged with protecting confidential and sensitive documents, what are your recommendations for cybersecurity?
That's a great question, and thank you for whoever submitted that. So yes, I think we have to think about the times that we're in now, and we know, not just because of the pandemic, but we're living in the world of technology. We're living in a virtual where here we are on Zoom right now doing a candidates forum, right? So we have to think about how important technology is. We have to make sure that we're protecting our assets and that our constituents, especially our vulnerable populations, such as our senior citizens, who are typically the ones that are being targeted for the next new fraudulent attack, right? We have to make sure that they understand what phishing is, for example. We have to make sure that they understand how to protect their passwords and do everything. I think a big part of it has to be a campaign around education when it comes to technologies and the different ways that you can get attacked. I think the other part is to make sure that we have the right people in place to work on the specific programs and technologies to protect these very documents that we're looking to put online and make sure that they're safe and secure and not putting anyone's information at risk.
All right, thank you. To repeat the question for you, Mr. Idoni, given that Westchester is a prime target for cyber attacks and the county clerk is charged with protecting confidential and sensitive documents, what are your recommendations for cybersecurity?
Good question. We do not do that part of the technology in the county clerk's office. The Office of Information Technology, which falls under our county executive, George Latimer, is responsible for the security of all of our systems. I think they do a darn good job. We have been attacked in the past I will happily tell you that nothing has been stolen or downgraded. One of the things I do want to divert you for a second, because Shanae brought it up, was that I have for years gone to senior centers all over Westchester County to do identity theft programs with senior citizens. I try to do it with a stern face, but a good sense of humor, so they understand that we're not trying to scare them, that they can be able to protect themselves. I was talking about the grandma scam before anybody ever heard of it. And I won't go into the details right now, but we in fact have a wonderful, wonderful IT system in Westchester County that protects us. However, nobody is invulnerable from attacks from these type of things. And we always do work, obviously, with not only the IT department, but the district attorney's office, the attorney general, to make sure people are protected as best as possible. But we do not have tech people working in the county clerk's office to actually do that type of work. We have professionals on the outside helping us out.
All right.
Thanks, John.
Next question goes to you, Tim Idoni, and let's talk about technology. It's an important tool in the county clerk's office. Can you comment on the current use of technology? In other words, which technology are you in charge of, and describe your plans for the use of technology in the future?
Oh my gosh, yeah, we broke the way of how to do technology in the county clerk's office statewide. I literally wrote the first draft of the legislation necessary to do electronic recording of land records back in 2010, working with the governor's office and then through the state legislature. We were able to put in the electronic recording of land records, the first county in New York State to actually record a deed electronically. Very, very proud of that. And then 2 years later, we flipped into the electronic filing of legal records. 95% of our legal records are now done electronically. 92% of our land records are done electronically. And those who are doing it, we're constantly helping. If somebody walks in and wants to electronically file something in our legal division, I have trained people to actually go out onto the floor, take a computer, and help them get their documents in electronically. There's a real benefit to this. The security is much better on electronic documents than it is with paper documents. Electronic documents don't get lost when paper documents do. And we're constantly moving forward in terms of bringing all that technology into other areas. There are only 4 parts of our courts that don't do electronic filing. And I'm in Albany right now, as a matter of fact, trying to get those 4 items taken care of. And that includes election law, by the way. You don't electronically file election law cases. And matrimonials, although we do take some matrimonial cases. It's extremely important. It's the future of the clerk's office. It's the #1 reason why I was able to cut down on the staff from 110 down to 60, as we said before. We have some ways to go, but we've gone a tremendous, I would say we're 95% of the way there already. That 5% is going to be done not in the next year or so.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now the question same question to Shanae Williams. Technology is an important tool in the county clerk's office. Can you comment on the current use of technology and describe your plans for the use of technology in the future?
Thank you. So I would love to comment in detail on how the use of technology in the clerk's office now, but being that I'm not there, it's kind of challenging for me to speak to it. But I do think it's important moving forward, what we should do to utilize technology more to really, like I said earlier, it's so important that the residents of Westchester know what resources and services the clerk's office has to offer and make sure that they're able to navigate these systems. One of the things that I would do if I'm elected is utilize all of the different social media platforms that is out there where people are, interacting, and make sure that we're putting the information of the clerk's office directly in their spaces so that they understand that we are there to service them and that they can take up advantage of it. That is something that I don't see happening now that I would definitely love to look into and make it happen for the future.
Thank you. The next question goes to Shanae Williams. The county clerk's office has a large budget and supervises millions of dollars in fees and taxes annually. What checks and balances are in place so that Westchester residents can trust their money is being handled responsibly?
Thank you again, John, for that question. So I am no stranger to, massive budgets. As council member, I, have to work with my colleagues in the mayor to get $1 billion budget. However, I'm also, I think it's important for Westchester residents to understand that the county clerk's office is essentially an office that has to work very closely with the county executive, especially when it comes to the budgets, because it's the county executive that proposes the budget to the Board of Legislators, and that is where you see the checks and balances. So we have to work together to make sure that the people's public dollars are going to the right resources, and make sure that they're safe and that there's no mismanagement or mishandling of any funds.
All right, thank you. Next question now for Tim Idoni. The same question. The county clerk's office has a large budget and supervises millions of dollars in fees and taxes annually. What checks and balances are in place so that Westchester residents can trust their money is being handled?
We take in $225 million in fees and taxes every year. It's a very, very large duty. Our budget is rather small from the standpoint of the part, comparing it to other larger departments like the health department, social services, and public safety. But that doesn't mean that every single day we don't make sure that we're managing our people well. We are very, very strict, to the point where sometimes the union thinks that we're micromanaging, but we make sure that people come to work. I ask people to come to work, to get to work on time and do their job, and that's exactly what they do. I'm very, very proud of that. We have a great little finance unit that takes care of all of that money. They work with the Department of Finance to make sure it's transferred. We handle federal money with naturalization services. We handle state money when it comes to mortgage taxes and transfer taxes. A lot of that money goes not only to the county, but also to other municipalities that collect at Yonkers, Peekskill, and Mount Vernon, collect transfer taxes. We handle that money, and we do our own internal audits, and we get audited every year by the county legislature to make sure that our budget is balanced. One of the greatest compliments I got in my career happened last year when Larry Soul, the budget director for the county of Westchester, said if every department head did their budget the way Tim Idoni does it, he'd be out of a job, because I am very, very strict with the public's money. I am a Democrat, and I love giving services. I think every service that is necessary should be given by the county of Westchester, but we shouldn't spend a single penny more than it needs to get that done. I am a very big anti-bureaucracy guy, as you can tell by how I've made my cuts. Bureaucracy is important in terms of getting the work done, but we don't need to pump a lot of people into the job to get it done. I told the County Board of Legislators a couple of years ago, this is no longer an employment agency. The office used to be chock full of patronage. It no longer is. And that's exactly the way you operate a modern public sector department. Thanks, John.
All right, thank you. Question 5 now, and we reverse the order. So we start with Tim Idoni. Both candidates have mentioned transparency in your campaign posts. Can you be specific about how transparency applies in the role of county clerk? What does that mean?
The transparency, thank you, John. Transparency is important in every county department. Every government entity should be as transparent as possible. What I consider to be transparent is the ability to be able to go out into the public and get the information to them that they need to answer any question that needs to be done, and do it in a modern way. We won a national award for something called Westchester Records Online back in 2009 or 2010. We developed a system where virtually every record that is public, and remember, we do have private files in the legal division where they're sealed by a judge. You can't see those. They're protected. The innocent are protected. But almost every other document is a public document, and you can see it by going on to Westchester Records Online, for which we won that national service, very, very readily. It was built in order to be transparent. As a matter of fact, we average over 3 million hits a year. Those are people that are out there that are using the system, getting the jobs done. In some cases, they do it in their professional capacity. Others are just curious to find out what a piece of property was sold for, and you can find that out on our site. You can also find out if there are any foreclosures that are coming up. And we spend a lot of time, by the way, fighting foreclosures by telling people to get onto our system, make sure you know what your status is for your property, and making sure that you can protect yourself from being foreclosed upon. Quite often, I've done a number of speeches from Yonkers right up through Cortland Manor in terms of foreclosures. And that's the way you do it. You use the systems that we've got to be able to educate people. And I think we've done a pretty good job over it over the years. Matter of fact, outstanding. We've won national awards for it. Thank you.
Thank you. The same question now to Shanae Williams. Both candidates have mentioned transparency. Can you be specific about how transparency applies in the role of county clerk?
Absolutely, John. Thank you. So yes, one of my 4 criteria that I am running on is transparency, in the fact that it's important that the people that we're serving here in Westchester, they're getting proactive and transparent leadership, and that we're using 21st century tools to make sure that we're being accountable, right? So that means if there's a new process, or if there's a new initiative that's being implemented in the clerk's office, processes can be very long and boring and particular and confusing. We want to make sure that the public understands every new change that is going to happen. We want to make sure that they understand how to navigate whatever we're implementing. That is what I mean by being transparent. And furthermore, John, transparency, like my opponent said, every level of government must be transparent. If you are going to, implement a budget where you're accepting a $42,000 pay raise, for example, you should put that out to the public so that they're aware and that they're not caught off guard, during a campaign, for example. It's important for the good, the bad, and everything in between to be made public so that the people understand what's happening and so that they can make their decisions accordingly.
All right, thank you for that answer. The next question is actually coming in now from a viewer who is on the chat, and we begin with Shanae Williams because you ended the last question. Question is, what is the diversity in the clerk's office right now, and why is that an important issue?
That's a good question. I couldn't tell you about the diversity in the clerk's office because from what I understand, there isn't much of it. Certainly not in the leadership positions, and that's something that I would like to know myself. But as someone who is a big fan and someone who promotes diversity on a local level here in the city of Yonkers, I can tell you that it is so important to make sure that not just the staff at the lower level, is diverse, but that the leadership is diverse. It's important to have different perspectives, different mindsets at the table so that we can do a better job on behalf of the people. So thank you for whoever asked that question.
All right, and now we ask Tim Idoni, what is the diversity in the clerk's office and why is diversity important?
Well, when I got there was virtually none. It was 85% white, 15% black, with one Hispanic in the office. I actually have created Spanish-speaking positions because I'll be honest with you, I would say probably 40 to 50% of the customers that come in, we do call them customers. We treat them like customers and not just residents, are Spanish-speaking. That didn't happen when I took there. I now have 5 counter people speaking Spanish to people. My top 2 deputies are women. I would say about 45% minority in the office in terms of our hirings. We have a special program that we just put in with Human Resources to be able to recruit more minorities. I've always, even when I was back in the mayor's office in New Rochelle, I wanted my government to look and sound like Westchester County, and in that case, New Rochelle. And that's exactly what we've done. You never have a problem speaking. We have put 100 languages on that website, the Westchester Records Online. So virtually any language in the United States that's spoken, it can translate into that system. We're very, very proud of that as well. Westchester County is changing. I learned in the 1970s in a sociology class that Westchester County was going to wind up being 30% Hispanic by 2020. Lo and behold, my professor was 100% right. We also have to be very concerned about all the minorities in Westchester County, and we're doing that every single day. We're very cognizant of the issue, and I think we have the most diverse county clerk's office maybe in the state of New York. You go north of Westchester and they're almost lily white, to be honest with you. That's not a knock. It's just the way they are, but it is a knock. Shouldn't be that way. And I have spent a lot of my career in terms of diversifying not only the county of Westchester, but putting African Americans and Hispanics in leadership positions in the city of New Rochelle over 14 years, including the city council and the judiciary. Thanks for the question. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. And the next question goes to you, Tim Idoni. The clerk is responsible for issuing pistol permits. Is there a role for the clerk's office in community safety? And if so, what is it?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, well, first thing we have to do, and I'll agree with Shanae on this, is a community education issue that we spend a lot of time on in terms of pistol permits. Now, understand something. The county clerk that's a misconception that the county clerk issues pistol licenses. We do not. We administer the licensing once the license has been approved by a county judge. And as a matter of fact, for the first year, and it takes literally a year, which drives me absolutely crazy in one way, but I'm not a big fan of guns. So in another way, I'm not upset about it. But the process actually goes through the Department of Public Safety, where they do background checks. It is then turned over to a county judge who makes the final decision. The judge sends the paperwork back, and we handle the administration of the issuing of the license from a standpoint that we actually print the license. But we do not make the decisions as to who gets it and who doesn't. However, I spent a lot of time outside the office talking to the public. The question comes up all the time. They should not only know that, but they should also know what the right way to handle guns is, and that the fact is you're not going to get a gun in Westchester County, a gun permit to work with the guns, unless you've taken courses to make sure that you can handle it. And the judge is very aware of that, so is public safety. And so I think Westchester does a really fine job of protecting their citizens from themselves in this case. But the one thing that everybody should understand is we handle the paperwork, they handle the background checks and the issuance of the license. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Now that I've been corrected in the question, I'll amend it a little bit for you, Shanae Williams. The clerk is involved in the pistol permit process. Is there a role for the clerk's office in community safety?
Absolutely. I think this is such a good question. As you well know, New York State has some of the strongest gun laws, period. And I think it's a wonderful thing as someone who supports all of our local community leaders that stand up and fight against illegal guns and you know, standing with Moms Demand Action, for example. This is something that's very important to me because it's something that I see, you know, gun violence is rising in my community alone in Yonkers. And so I think it's important for us to certainly educate the public, like my opponent said, but it's more important for them to understand the process. If they want to get their pistol license, they need to understand the process and what all of that means, the cost, everything that comes with it. And I think it's important, I would propose that we partner up with our state elected leaders, our representatives, and host seminars and forums and let people know about what their rights are and what the process is. And I think it will make a lot of things easier throughout this campaign. I've had a lot of people talk to me about the process for pistol licenses, and they're very frustrated. They're asking if there's something that I can do. I often tell them this is something that we are simply just following the laws, that the New York State laws, and following the guidelines. But I will do everything I can to streamline that process, to make sure that everything is done by the book and that the public is being safe throughout this entire process.
All right, thank you for that answer. The next question goes to you, Shanae Williams. When the clean slate bill is passed in Albany, how quickly will the county clerk's office be able to expunge records? And can you tell us a bit about the process of expunging and why that's important?
It's a really important bill, and I'm 100% in favor of it. I can't wait for it to happen. I think it's so important as a woman of color and someone who comes from a struggling family and know what it's like to see friends and family go down the wrong path, and sometimes innocently. It's so important for people to be able to get second chances. And I don't know how long or how quickly the turnaround process will be to expunge folks' records, but I think it's important for me, if elected, that's something that I would make a priority once I'm elected and in that office. It is something I have to do a research on to make sure that we're doing it by the books, but I can't speak to the specific timeline of how quickly that turnaround would be, as I am not there with all of the information.
Same question out to Tim Idoni. When the clean slate bill is passed in Albany, how quickly will the county clerk's office be able to expunge records? And can you tell us a bit about the process of expunging and why that's important?
Sure. We agree. Shanae and I agree that this is a very important piece of legislation and absolutely necessary. A lot of innocent people are walking around with things on their record that they did when they're 18, 19 years old and shouldn't have it on their record anymore. I want to go back to the other question for 2 seconds. I spent a lot of time behind the scenes serving as chair of the legislation committee for the State County Clerks Association, and working on the SAFE Act issues that were eventually done in 3 nights by the governor and the state legislature, and they should be proud of that. It was extremely important law, and I'm proud to say that I was a part of it behind the scenes. Expungement, we're already on our way. We've already started to expunge marijuana cases off the books. It's a big job, but we're in better shape than most county clerks in New York State because of the ability to be able to handle electronic filings and to be able to work to get them off the books as quickly as possible. I've talked, the staff has already been prompted on it. We're ready to go. It's not going to be done in a week, but I don't think it should take more than 6 months and probably less than 3 months on almost all the cases. It's going to go fast, and we're going to see what happens next with the state legislature. But we're ready. We're ready to go. We've already started to do it in some cases.
All right. Next question goes to Tim Idoni. How are fees determined, and how do you know if they're affordable to people? How would you restructure them?
Oh my gosh. Fees are almost always determined. They are always determined by state legislature when it comes to land records and court cases. There's a couple of fees that we have from the county government that they allow us to go up and down with a little bit, but they're not many. I won't go into any details on it. And we get fees from the federal government for handling naturalization services. It's $13.76, if I remember correctly. Some fees, I don't think any of the fees we have are unfair because the state is very resistant to raise them. State legislature thinks of fees as taxes, and nobody wants to be blamed for raising taxes, even at that level. I'll give you a prime example. Pistol licenses. It costs $10 to get a pistol license, $10 for the license. If you buy a pistol to add to that license, it's $3. The last time it was changed was 1974. And you'll even find conservative clerks upstate that say, they should go to 25 or 30 bucks. But no, we don't raise fees very, very often at all because they're always dictated by the state. What I try to do is I try to have our services cost what the fee that comes in equals it out. I mean, that's how government should work. The fee should be equivalent to what the cost of running the department is. Unfortunately, when it comes to something like pistol licenses, it costs a lot more to be able to process the license than we're actually getting the fee because it's so darn low. We get complaints once in a while for the fee. The one fee that we do control with the county is the fee to handle paperwork on the Westchester Records online system. We charge $20 a day for anywhere from 24 to 47 hours. And I won't go into the detail of how that works out from that standpoint. That's a fee that we can change. Some people think it should be for free. I tell them it's a user's fee. Those who use the system should pay for it. Those who don't need the system don't need their property taxes going up because other people are using it, like corporations, title companies, people that who can afford to pay, I think, a very reasonable fee. But that's the way it should. Fee should always reflect the cost of the service, and that's the way I run this department.
All right. Same question to Shanae Williams. How do you know if fees are affordable, and would you restructure them?
So thank you. So fees, how to know if fees are affordable? I think it's important to bring the community in on things like this, right? As a council member, one of the things that I look forward to is when we have public hearings, whenever we're going to do like a local law or make a drastic change that's going to affect the public. Even though the county clerk is not a legislative position, it's important to note that they work with legislators. And if for the fees that are controlled by the county clerk, I think it's important to bring the information to the public whenever there's the budget season's coming up and you're going to propose a new fee or make changes to any of the fees. It's important to let the public know and get their input, include them, be accessible to them so that they know that you're there and get their feedback. That is the most important thing. That's how you know. And you also know by just having your ear to the ground and your feet on the ground, being in the community, talking to the residents, talking to the businesses, talking to the senior citizens, talking to everyone who you expect would come through the clerk's office for one reason or another and get their feedback on how things are going and what they would like to see, what is more affordable, and go from there.
Thank you. Next question is to you, Shanae Williams. And we just heard mentioned naturalization fees. The clerk is responsible for passports and ID applications as well as naturalization. How can this responsibility be used to positively affect the undocumented? And what role does the clerk's office play in services for the undocumented?
Right. So, as someone who has stood day and night fighting with vulnerable populations such as the undocumented, I think it's so important when we think about identification cards. You know, one of the things when I first started campaigning and going out into the community, telling people about this service that the county clerks have, they're like, "What? I didn't know. I could have easily gotten that." A lot of people don't realize that it's even an option. And I think that's a problem. So that's something that we have to work towards changing. I think I've had conversations with folks from Catholic charities and folks from different immigrant populations throughout Westchester, and they would love to get a county identification card. They would love to have it, but they have a problem with going all the way to White Plains for one reason or another. They might not have access. They only take public transportation, and they work very time sensitive jobs that are essential, and so it's very difficult for them to find the time to go and do that in White Plains. This is where having that mobile office is so crucial to make sure that we're being very, very intentional about going into communities where immigrant populations, where undocumented populations are, and servicing them. This is something that I will definitely be doing as your county clerk. I think you're muted, John.
Yes, thank you. Now to Tim Idoni, the same question. The clerk is responsible for passports and ID applications, as well as naturalization. How can this responsibility be used to positively affect the undocumented, and what role does the clerk's office have in providing services to the undocumented?
Well, we are an agent of the federal government when it comes to passports and naturalization. We have to follow very, very strict rules in terms of how you handle those particular situations. Matter of fact, the federal government handles the naturalization up front. We take the back end of it. Just the opposite on the passports. We handle the front end of a passport application. It's then delivered to the federal government. But all those are very, very strictly monitored and regulated by federal law. So it's very difficult to change that. The personal ID is a county ID. It's technically a residence ID. It proves your residency in Westchester. We can't go much farther than that because it's very difficult to be able to identify much more about a person than the basic documents that we ask for. Shanae mentioned the mobile office. We are expanding the mobile office into 3 more areas over the next couple of weeks, as a matter of fact, as it starts to go out after COVID. One of the reasons why the mobile office doesn't do personal IDs is because you need to have a certain level, a higher level, believe it or not, of expertise for the personal ID program than you do for the passport, because the passport are American citizens and the IDs quite often are undocumented people, and we're trying to give them some documentation, but they have to show us something to be able to prove who they are. The last thing you ever want to do is start giving out personal IDs to people who you can't possibly identify. Not only will you might give it out to people who don't deserve it, but you also could create a black market out there, which would be an absolute tragedy in Westchester as people start selling these ID cards on the black market. So we're very, very careful about that. The ID cards also need a lot more equipment in order to process, because when somebody comes in for an ID card, they get it on the spot if they qualify. A passport, the information is sent up to the federal government to actually produce the passport book or the passport card. So there are 2 different technologies involved, very, very difficult. We only have 1 mobile office, and we've chosen to make the passports the most important thing there because it's easier to handle out on the street. Our professionals have to handle the IDs inside the office.
All right, thank you for that answer.
Good question, though. Thank you, John.
The next question goes to you, Tim Idoni. Some have characterized this race as a choice between experience and change. Do you agree with this assessment? And if so, which is more important?
I would say that experience matters. And sometimes when you have a lot of experience, change can happen faster because you already know what you're doing when you walk in the office in the morning. Doesn't mean that somebody's going to spend the rest of time in the same office or even spend the rest of the next decade in the next office. However, experience is the most important part of this job. You not only have to go in and be able to talk about social issues and policies, you need to be able to govern under civil service laws, under personnel regulations that the county promulgates. You have to be able to not only know a budget, and Shanae does have some experience over the last 2 years as a city council member. I've been doing budgets for 40. I started in Bronxville in 1980 doing budgets. And that helps a lot, because if you have a lot of experience, you can spend more time out on the street doing more work because you're not sitting there micromanaging your department. You've got good quality people doing the job, and you know how to make the decisions much faster. Change is always going to be there. Change is always good. But change doesn't mean that you just throw the guy out because he's been there for 16 years just for change's sake. It should be that experience should be the thing. And what I'd like people to do is compare our resumes, compare the work that we've done so far, and make a decision. Who would you like to hire if you were running a company? Shanae has a great future in politics and in government. I've had a great experience in government, and I continue to learn every single day, but also using all the things that I learned over the last 40 years to move the department forward. So change can happen either way.
All right, same question now for Shanae Williams. Thank you. Some have characterized this race as a choice between experience and change. Do you agree with this assessment? And if so, which is more important?
Thank you. But before I get to that question, I just want to go back really quickly to the previous question. A couple of things I wanted to kind of point out. With the naturalization process, it's so important that we collaborate with our congressional representatives, Jamal Bowman and Mondaire Jones, to really inform people of what the laws around naturalization is and how to navigate that process. That is absolutely necessary. And I think that's something that the clerk's office could and should be doing. In addition to that, I think, Mr. Idoni said that ID cards that the county clerk issues is not for undocumented. This is true. But I also think that this is something that can be changed, for the simple fact that the state changed the laws to give driver's licenses to undocumented. We can find a way to make this so for residents who want to get a county ID card. And that is something that I will lobby for and work towards as your county clerk. Now back to the question about experience versus change. I agree, experience absolutely matters. And change is very good. So it is, I hope people don't just chalk it up to experience versus change, because there's so much more to this. I think it's important for folks to see the passion and to see the drive and to see the energy that I bring to this race and what I will do with this energy as your county clerk, right? So these are my opponent said that the most important part of the job is experience. I disagree. I think it's important to have experience, but it's so important to have your ear to the ground, to have a fresh new perspective, and to have innovative ideas that you bring to the table to keep the office up with the times. And really, my goal is to bring the office into the 21st century doing exactly that. So yes, experience matters, but change is very good. And I think, quite frankly, that we should have term limits at every level of government, including this level at the clerk's office. And at this point, I just can't sit here and say that 16 years is okay, or 20 years is okay. I think it's important to have changeover and new leadership, because with new leadership come new perspective and a new generation of leaders that are looking to do something that's beneficial for the population and the future of where we're headed. So it's so important to have change.
All right, thank you for that answer. We've now come to the point in our panel where we are giving each of the candidates an opportunity to ask a question of the other candidate. So Shanae Williams, I'll begin with you. What is the question you'd like to ask of Tim Idoni?
Okay, so in the 16 years that you've been, or almost 16 years that you've been county clerk, what specific measures have you took to promote equity in the office? And I ask this because it's been brought to my attention, and we touched on this a little bit earlier, but it's been brought to my attention that you do not promote men and women of color. And if this is not the case, please tell us how many of your supervisors and deputy clerks are people of color.
Good question, Shanae. Thank you. As I said before, when I got there, there were 15% people of color, no Hispanics. And we had, it was almost a completely white management, was a completely white management team when I got there, and it no longer is. All the people who were hired in the management staff basically came from the same city, the city of Yonkers. So it was hardly even a diverse around Westchester County situation, I have cured that problem completely. When it comes to managing this department, one of the things you must understand, not just you, everybody, I mean, is that most of the positions, including upper middle management and lower middle management positions, are civil service. You have to pass a test in order to get that. Well, guess who got and I have very good upper middle management people. I've chosen people off the list well, but guess where they came from? The previous administration, and they're all white. So there's a connection there. So it's not the problem of this county clerk in terms of being able to promote people of color. There were no people of color on the list for the most part. So I'm trying to desperately change that, but I can't fire people in order to make that change. I am very proud of the people who work for me, including those who came from the previous administration. It's very, very difficult to come in and make changes when you're dealing with the previous administration's folks. But we have done it successfully, and we've done it very, very well. I have already put in a change into our EEO report just this year, as a matter of fact, to force human resources, the department that actually recruits people for the civil service positions, to advertise in minority newspapers and minority media to be able to bring more minorities into the job. But we've got to get them into the position of being able to get promoted for the most part. I'm very proud of my deputies. Two of my deputies have been with me since day one, and I'm very, very proud of them, and as well as my first deputy, who was a former senior attorney with the county. Thank you, Bruce. I used up my whole time. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that answer. And now, Tim Idoni, you get to ask a question of Shanae Williams.
Thank you. Shanae, one of the things that we've heard over and over again tonight is the number of records that need to be taken care of. 140,000 individual records go through this department every single year, and we need to be on top of them right away. One of the things that we've noticed during this campaign is that you have failed to record and report your finances for this campaign. And I'd like to know, A, why and when are you going to file? It is a state law that you have to file those reports. You have not done so. And I'd like to know why you haven't done it, and when are you going to, if you're planning on doing it in the next few days, because you're already 2.5 weeks behind on the last one.
Thank you. So the first one I did not file because there was no record to file. And I know that I did miss the deadline for this recent filing, which we're working on. My accountant is actually in the process of doing that right as we speak. So you can look forward to looking that up in the next couple of days. But I also want to just point out that I don't think I heard your specific answer to the specific measures that you've taken to promote equity in your office, but I appreciate you answering the question nonetheless. I think it's important for the public to understand that equity is something that I'm very passionate about, and to say that there are no people of color that are on the list for you to choose from is sort of a cop-out to me. I think it's important that you go above and beyond and let people of color know when there are positions that they can take the exam so that they can qualify and have opportunities in the clerk's office. But again, I appreciate your question, Mr. Idoni, and you can look forward to checking the files for this campaign records shortly.
All right, thank you for that answer. We are coming up to the 1 hour mark, and we promised to try to get everybody home in an hour. So it's time now for our closing statements, and we begin with Shanae Williams.
Okay, thank you again. Thank you, Mr. Metaxas, for hosting this campaign forum tonight. Thank you again to the Indivisible Westchester groups, Dr. Connolly, Shanae Powell, all of the leaders that are on here tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to get before you and answer these questions. It's very important that our residents make an informed decision, and I'm very grateful to have had this opportunity. That being said, back to the conversation about change and new leadership. It is important to have that turnover. It is important to give people who are passionate and have the drive and energy to do the work that is necessary to go above and beyond and really re-envision it and explore the clerk's office together. It's important to bring resources directly into the communities of Westchester, especially into marginalized communities. And that is something that I'm very passionate about. I'm humbly asking the voters, the Democratic voters here in Westchester County to give me an opportunity to do the work on their behalf, you will not be disappointed. Thank you for this opportunity, and I look forward to gaining your support over the next few weeks so that we can be victorious on June 22nd.
Thank you for that statement. And now our closing statement from Tim Idoni.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John, for doing such a great job. And thank you to Indivisible Westchester for putting this program on. I'm going to use 30 seconds of my time to talk about Ms. Williams not telling you the truth on the last answer. She transferred $5,000 from her city council report, which was done for some reason, but she couldn't do the county clerk's into someplace. It went over to this other account. Anytime you move money in these situations, it's supposed to be reported to the state. She did not do it. She spent a lot of money on advertising, a lot of money on social media, and yet she's telling you that she didn't spend any money because that's why she didn't do the report. Hogwash. Ladies and gentlemen, I am a good government person. I don't like to go negative on these campaigns. I've kept it clean the entire time, but you have to be honest with the public. You have to put your reports out there. You have to be transparent. And that's exactly what we've done. My second report is almost ready to go, and she hasn't even done her first. Ladies and gentlemen, I am proud of the record that I've had in my public sector employment for the last 40 years. I said that I've been working for the government for 40 years. I'm proud of that. It's been disparaged over and over, and that's just not fair. It's not right. Government should be for the people. We work for the people. We give them an honest day's pay. I go in I took 7 days off last year, ladies and gentlemen, 7, because I love my job. I love what I do. I go in and I roll my sleeves up every single morning. The staff knows I'm going to be there. They know I'm going to put a day's work in. The public knows that I'm going to put a day's work in there because they've come to understand it. They deserve it. And that's just the way we're going to continue to operate over the next 4 years. I want to thank you all for listening this evening. It's been entertaining. It's been fun. And I think it's been educational. And I hope you can support me on June 22nd. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that statement. That is all the time we have this evening. We want to thank the candidates, County Clerk Tim Idoni and Yonkers Council Member Shanae Williams. And thank you to the Indivisible and activist groups who sponsored tonight's forum. Once again, Election Day is June 22nd, 2 weeks from tomorrow. Early voting begins this coming Saturday, the 12th. The biggest thank you is to those of you who took the time to watch tonight and who are going to exercise your right to vote. Remember to vote, it's important. And thanks for joining us. Good night.